Alright, so Roxy is now in the same coastal city as Rudeus and his party. She is together with two of Paul's former companions, namely Talhan the Clifftop. He's a dwarf, and Alina Lee's Dragon Road. She is an erotic elf who's cursed by strong lustful desires. She simply can't help herself. Rudy hears Roxy's voice. He turns around, but since he was in the middle of a conversation with the guy at the port, unfortunately the boat fee is too expensive. Not because of inflation or the economy or anything silly like that, but because of Ruiger's race. They simply don't have the money to pay for the boat trip. While they are having a delicious meal at a local restaurant, Rudy starts talking about money. They need it. Ruiger apologizes for being a burden. It's because of him that they have to pay extra. Then at night, as Rudy continues thinking about solutions to his predicament, he finds himself in the presence of a Hitogami once again. Just like last time, Hitogami gives him a piece of advice. He tells him to buy some food in a certain place. Next day, as he is on his way, he sees an old lady with blue hair. This makes him wonder what Roxy is doing, and guys, even though Roxy looks the same age as Rudy, let's not forget that she is a middle-aged woman in human years. Coincidentally, Roxy was running right behind him. She's running as though she had just seen two supers fighting each other. He then comes across someone sitting in the street, hungry and in a shady outfit. Rudy offers the person the food he had just purchased, and guess what? This person is not only a cute purple-haired demon girl, but she also happens to be the demon emperor. Her name is Kishirika Kishirisu, and you can consider Rudy surprised. Of course, Rudy didn't have any way to verify her statement, but he plays along, kneels and greets her how you'd normally greet royalty. This pleases her and also makes her laugh. However, when she senses the undeniable fact that Rudy is also a hardcore pervert, this weirds her out. But she's still ready to grant any one of his wishes. Rudy tells her he wants to be rich, but she has no money, so he jokingly says something degenerate, which makes her start stripping. Even though there wasn't much left to strip, he quickly makes her stop, but as it turns out, she was just playing along too. After all, she already has a fiancé. Anyway, she then offers him the demon eye. Rudy accepts, though he is not taking her seriously. Well, the very next moment she grabs his face and replaces one of his eyes with a demon eye. But is a demon eye useful? You bet. It's kind of like advanced observation hockey from One Piece, in the sense that it allows you to see a few seconds into the future. She leaves right after, while Rudy looks like he has an annoying migraine headache. Then as he is taking a stroll, he bumps into someone. The man is angry at him, but Rudy just blows him away with a wind spell. Is that a bit harsh? No, the reason he blew him away is because the man was in a dangerous spot. He actually saved him from the pot that was going to fall on his head. The man is left stunned and speechless while Rudy walks away. Later in the evening, when he talks about it with Ruiger and Eris, he explains that she is indeed the real deal, which surprises Rudy a little because he was still under the impression that she is just not right in the head. In the next few days, Eris and Ruiger help him get used to his new eye. And about a week later, when he duels with Eris, he is easily able to see all of her movements. As I said, it's just like Katakuri's future sight. Eris tries everything, but he sees through it all. Ruiger praises him for getting stronger, which leads to Rudy challenging him to a duel as well. But even with his demon eye, he was no match. Ruiger beat him to a pulp. As they say, you may see it coming, but what can you do about it? He comforts Eris by telling her that he lost to Ruiger, but of course, Eris does feel a bit sad. She trained so hard, but Rudy just defeated her almost effortlessly. At night, he tries to leave when Ruiger stops him. He tells Ruiger that he is only going around to do naughty things, but Ruiger knows his true intentions. He is going to sell his staff to get money for Ruiger's ticket, and Ruiger doesn't want it. He knows that the staff means a lot to Rudy. It was a present from Eris after all. Ruiger tells him that they are a team and they will figure it out together, and while they're having this conversation, a familiar man pops up. It's a guy whom Rudy saved from the falling pot. He introduces himself as Gallus Cleaner and says that he wants to help. Now, while Rudy was experiencing all of this, there is Roxy. Let's go back in time to when she arrived at the coastal city along with Talhand and Elena Lise. She's here to search for Rudy and other missing members of Paul's family, but little does she know that Rudy is only a few meters away talking to the boat guy. To be fair, it's hard for her to find him anyway because he has been traveling under an alias. When they are in a cafeteria-type place, Elena Lise starts looking around for men whom she can have some fun with. At night, they also talk about Rudy's party, Dead End, but then again, they have no idea that it's Rudy's. In the morning, Roxy explores the city and, well, she ends up witnessing an epic sparring session between Ruiger and Eris. However, she confuses them as two superds, fighting each other and runs away. Remember that instance when Roxy was seen running while Rudy was carrying food? It was right after this. She was running away from Ruijerd and Eris. Eventually, when she fails to find any leads in the city, she and her party decide to search in the next town. Going back to Rudy and the others, thanks to Gallus' cleanup, they are able to leave the city as well. How? He uses the oldest trick in the book. He smuggles them into the ship and helps them leave in the middle of the night. All he asks is for Rudy to help liberate a few goods who are being held by some smugglers at the other port. While they are on their way, Rudy fantasizes about ending up on a deserted island with Eris, making her his wife, and then doing naughty things together. But as they say, reality is often disappointing. Let's just say that their trip to the other port wasn't all that romantic. Rudy does heal her when she gets motion sickness though. Then, when they reach the port, Rudy goes to their hideout to do what Gallus asked him to do. And as it turns out, the goods he had to liberate are actually smuggled beast children. They are in horrible shape. The smugglers have kept them in a cage, and since Ruijerd was also smuggled, he's with them. When Rudy finds him, Ruijerd gets angry. He straight up kills all of the smugglers and frees the children from them. Rudy talks to them in the language of the beasts and assures them that they are safe, but he then returns back to get the big magical dog who was still there. He is alone with the dog inside the smugglers' hideout when a few beastmen appear. They're actually here to save the beast children. But since the children weren't there and Rudy was looking sus, they capture him and take him to their village. Next thing you know, Rudy is a prisoner in the Doldia village. His prison is hanging from a tree. He is butt naked, but thankfully, he does get food. All in all, he's being treated like an animal. The people of the village would look at him with disgust in their eyes, especially the lady who brings him food. When he stares at her chest too long, she throws his food in his face. Days pass by and nothing changes. Sooner than later, Rudy gets a roommate. His name is Geese, and he's another human who was arrested by the Beastmen. Naturally, Rudy asks him why he was arrested, and he explains that it's because he was gambling and they caught him cheating. Geese knows about him because Dead End is famous. At night, Rudy asks him to help him get over, but he isn't so sure. And before the conversation could go anywhere, Rudy notices that the lady who watches over him isn't where she is supposed to be. Plus, the entire village starts burning. Rudy uses the woods to create a key, and the two of them get out. But what exactly caused the fire? It's the smugglers. There are more of them. At first, Rudy and Geese run fast because they're trying to escape. But when he sees those smugglers attacking and hurting the beastmen, all the while capturing and taking away their children, he feels enraged and prepares himself to help. Geese is also ready to lend him a hand. Rudy starts by causing rain using a powerful water spell. It extinguishes the fire in the village. More of the smugglers appear, but at that point, the powerful beastman who captured Rudy also enters the chat. His name is Guys. He is strong enough to handle them, and seeing how Rudy was fighting against the smugglers, he asks him to help. They easily defeat the subordinates, but a familiar face appears. It's Gallus, and he's holding a little beast girl hostage. Turns out he's the leader of the smuggling ring, and the reason he smuggled Ruijerd was to distract the beastmen so that he can discover the location of their village. It clearly worked because now he's here. He offers Rudy a chance to join his side, but of course Rudy declines. He then throws the little girl at them and starts attacking. He's strong enough to even defeat the strongest beastman. This makes Rudy feel afraid. Even though the girl cries for help, he isn't so sure that he can help. But then suddenly the magical dog pops up and attacks Gallus. Rudy also joins the fight. He attacks Gallus with a water spell. The fight heats up. He uses his future sight to see Gallus' attack, but still gets hit with a dagger. However, thanks to the magical dog and Geese, he's able to land a powerful explosion spell that knocks out Gallus for good. He also falls unconscious because he used too much of his energy. Though, when the magical dog wakes him up the next morning, he sees Eris's happy face. There is Ruijerd as well. The lady, the beastmen are also there. And as you can expect, they are ashamed of themselves for treating him like a criminal. They apologize and sincerely thank him for saving their village and their people. Eris then tells Rudy that they fought smugglers as well while trying to protect the children. She also became friends with them. Eris is so happy and so excited to return home and tell her grandfather all about her journey. But speaking of her grandfather, he's been sentenced to death by the king because of the mana surge. Right before he's executed, he wishes Eris and Rudy happiness. Moving on, Rudy tries to peek while Eris is bathing outside with the beast girls when Guys notices him. Thanks to his sixth sense, Guys can sense that Rudy is horny, but luckily he apologizes before Guys could take extreme measures. One of those girls is actually Guys' daughter. Later, when Eris teaches her new friends the human language, Guise thanks her for being friends with his daughter. Now, remember Ghislaine? You know, the beast lady who used to be a member of Paul's party and the one who took Rudy to become Eris's tutor? When her name comes up, Guise is surprised that she's still alive, but he's not pleased though. She is a disgrace to the people of their village because she abandoned her duties. When he leaves the room with his daughter, Eris follows him to stop him. In his mind, Ghislaine is her kind master, and so she wasn't just going to let him disrespect her. She starts crying, and so Rudy consoles her. Guise realizes that he hurt Eris, and so he asks Rudy if Ghislaine has actually become a respectable individual, and Rudy explains that just like Eris, he also respects her. She has indeed become a kind and respectable person. Following this, Eris's friends wanted to learn more about Ghislaine from her. Guy's daughter, Tona, also reveals that Ghislaine is actually her father's sister. Eris tells her that she is her sword instructor. Tona gets interested in sword fighting, even though she always hated it, but Eris teaches her what she learned from Ghislaine. Rudy and Guise observe from a distance, and Rudy tells Guise that Ghislaine has received the title of Sword Queen. 3 months pass by. Tona has gotten pretty good at sword fighting thanks to Eris's tutelage, but now that even the rain has stopped, it's time for them to leave. This leads to an argument between Tona and Arisa, and then a fight. She doesn't want Eris to leave after all. She wants her to stay forever. When Guise talks to his daughter about it, he tells her more about Ghislaine, how she was very rebellious and angry, and that's why when an adventurer, whom we can presume to be Paul, took her away, nobody really cared. He himself felt that he couldn't even say goodbye. This speaks to Tona. She goes with Teresina to their hut and apologizes. Rudy saw them coming, and so he made sure to bail with the magical dog. Eris accepts her apology, and they start getting along again. In the morning, it's time for them to finally leave. They say their goodbyes. Eris hugs Tona and Teresina. All 3 of them are crying, but Guise changes the mood by challenging Eris to a duel. He wants to see his sister's swordsmanship. It only lasts a moment or two, and then Guise thanks her for it. They leave the village while he remarks that the next time they should visit with Ghislaine. Then there is Guise. He jumps on board and says that he will take them to the holy country of Millis, which is where they are heading. But really, he's just hitching a ride. Though to be fair, he does know a lot. Guise tells them about the legend of Millis City and also about the 7 great powers. Basically, 7 great powers are the 7 strongest individuals in the world. Ruijerd adds that when he was young, he wanted to be one of them. After a few days of traveling and having fun along the way, they finally reach the capital city. As Guise part way with them, Eris asks him to teach her how to cook whenever they meet again. And Rudy grins because cute little Eris here wants to be a housewife. Guise tells Rudy to visit the Adventurers Guild and leaves. The gang enters the capital and gets themselves a place. It has been 1.5 years since they started this journey. He also tells them that they should take the next day off, since he should better write a letter to his family. He gets worried because Eris says that she will be slaying goblins, but no worries because Ruijerd will be there to protect her. In the morning, as he is trying to write the letter, he notices someone getting kidnapped. He isn't very sure about helping because the last time he did help, he was abducted and then imprisoned. But in the name of Dead End, he steps out to help. He enters their hideout, finds a panty and wears it on his face, reveals himself to be Ruijerd of Dead End and proceeds to beat them up. A few more arrive, including the owner of those panties. Rudy makes the creepiest expressions possible, and even when fighting him, all he does is just stare at her chest. However, the leader of these guys is on another level. He's able to cut the panty on Rudy's face and also stop the fighting. And you're not going to believe who this guy is. It's Paul Greyrat. Unfortunately, he's in horrible shape. They sit down to talk and he asks Rudy if he has seen his message, but no, he hasn't. Rudy then tells him all about his story and his journey. He goes into detail and laughs while talking about it. This angers Paul. It's like Rudy has just been lazing around and having fun this entire time. When he asks Rudy why he didn't write a letter, Rudy has no answer. But when Paul starts insulting him, Rudy insults him back. He says that Paul has just been drinking with girls anyway. This leads to a fist fight, and well, Rudy uses his future sight to win against his father. But then a girl appears and stops Rudy. She starts tearing up. It's his little sister Norn. He tells her that he is her big brother, but she doesn't recognize him and tells him to stop beating her father. Rudy's PTSD starts triggering when everyone stares at him as if he's the bad guy, and so he tries to leave. Paul gets up and gives him a reality check. Rudy and Eris aren't the only ones who were caught in the mana disaster. A lot of people are dead or missing, and these people include his mother, his stepmother, and his sister Aisha. Not just that, he also realizes that the boy who was kidnapped is the kid who bullied Sylphie in her childhood. It was just a misunderstanding. Later, Rudy feels horrible about all of this. He throws up when he thinks about the fact that his mother and sister are still missing, and just sits in his room all empty. Eris cheers him up by hugging him and telling him that she will be on his side. And for Rudy, whose PTSD was triggering, this meant the world to him. We then see what Paul had been up to this entire time. After the disaster, he found himself far away along with Norn, whom he was carrying. It was a tough journey, but he eventually made it back home, only to realize that his village had disappeared. He wrote a message for Rudy and started helping other families, but as time continued to pass, he felt more and more into depression. In the present, we see Geese meeting Paul. As it turns out, Geese is a member of Paul's party, just like Ghislaine, Elinalise, and Talhan. He talks about things with Paul, and Geese tells him that Rudy didn't have it easy either. He survived as an 11-year-old on the Demon Continent. How could he have had it easy? Paul asks Geese about why his son seemed so happy. He explains that maybe it's because he didn't want him to worry. This makes Paul realize that he was being pathetic. And so later that night, when he realizes what could have happened to his son in the Demon Continent, he decides to quit drinking. Next morning, Paul visits Rudy. Eris is angry at him for how he fought his son, but Rudy understands. Ruijerd grabs him, and as he is taking her outside, he tells Paul that he should be glad that his son is still alive, considering what happened. Paul apologizes to Rudy, and Rudy apologizes too. For what it's worth, both of them were in the wrong. As they were talking, Rudy was looking down. The owner of the inn tells him to first take a proper look at his father's face, and when he takes a look at his father's face, he recalls a sad memory from his past. When he and his friend were playing video games, when his friend tried to help him, he attacked the guy instead. Unfortunately, that was the last time they ever hung out together. This makes Rudy realize how horrible yesterday was. He tells his father that they should simply pretend that it never happened and that they're just reuniting now. After saying this, Rudy hugs his dad and Paul starts crying, and honestly, I think a little tear just fell out of my eye too. Both father and son go back to how they were before all of this, and Paul also apologizes to Eris. Rudy also reveals the bad news that her family is missing too, but she takes the news like a champ. Now Rudy and his party will continue traveling to the central continent, while Paul will go to places he has not searched yet. They say goodbye to each other and Ruijerd pats Norn's head. Okay, so Rudy, Eris, and Ruijerd leave the capital city of Millis and depart on a ship towards the central continent. How can they afford the trip? It's thanks to the money Paul gave him. Roxy, on the other hand, meets Nokopara. Remember him? The guy who wanted to expose Ruijerd? Roxy is acquainted with him because he and her used to be members of the same party. He also learns from him that Blaze is dead. Nokopara then also talks about Dead End and how one of the members is a Superd. This horrifies Roxy. She then visits her home village and meets her parents. It has been a long time. She was going to leave soon, but after realizing how much her people missed her, she decides to stick around for a while. She also learns about them from Rudy and his party, and how he visited their village 2 years ago. Roxy is obviously quite relieved that Rudy is alright, but faints when she hears that Ruijerd, a member of his party, is a Superd. She makes the connection and realizes that Dead End is actually Rudy's party. Roxy then returns to the city of Rikarisu, only to find Elinalise doing naughty deeds without any shame whatsoever. This causes her to react extremely. She blows up the room. Anyways, Roxy, Elinalise, and Talhand then set out to find the other members of Rudy's family. She is certain that she and Rudy will meet again soon. As for Rudy, he meets Hitogami once again. Of course, he ends up asking about his mother Zenith, his sister Aisha, and his stepmother Lilia. He also asks about Sylphie, Ghislaine, Eris's father, and her grandpa. Hitogami shows him a scene of his little sister. He tells him that he will find her in the palace of Shiron Kingdom, but he will have to write a letter to someone he knows in the palace. Otherwise, he won't be able to rescue his mother and sister. This concludes their meeting and Rudy wakes up on the ship. He wonders about the reason why Hitogami made him get a demon eye. His party then reaches the central continent. They travel by river. Eris is pleased by an onigiri, even though Rudy couldn't care less. Well, unlike her, he spent 34 years in modern-day Japan. Alright, so the gang enters the capital of Shiron Kingdom. Eris gets super excited. She knows that Rudy's master teaches here, but Rudy is concerned. Of course, he is. His family is being held captive here. Eris then realizes that Rudy has 2 little sisters. Rudy writes Roxy a letter because that's what Hitogami told him to do. Plus, Roxy works in the palace as a teacher. He gives the letter to an employee at the inn and walks away. As he is walking around, he notices that he's being followed by a little girl. He also senses some armed men in the same direction, so he runs into an alley and then seals the path behind him with a stone wall. When he realizes that the situation isn't as serious as he thought it was, he dispels the stone wall and sees the girl tussling with two armed men. They are soldiers from the palace, and the girl is angry because they stole her letter. Rudeus takes the guards out of the chat using his magic and then escapes with the girl. He can see that the girl is actually his sister Aisha, and he has to keep his identity a secret, and so he introduces himself as Shadow Moon Knight. Aisha tells him that she needs help in sending her father a letter that would let her father know that her mother, Lilia, is being held captive in the palace. When talking to her about who can help her, she mentions that she has an undependable, perverted older brother. Well, Rudy couldn't reveal his identity, but that must have stung. He tells her that he is the pet owner of Dead End, and also reassures her that he will rescue her mother. Following this, he also tells Eris and Ruiger to keep his identity a secret. In the morning, he receives a reply for the letter he had written. It's a lady named Ginger York, who tells him that Roxy wants to see him. This is good news, but it turns out to be a trap. Roxy isn't in the palace. It's her student, the 7th Prince Pax. As we know, he's obsessed with Roxy. He's also the one who held Lilia hostage, and now he wants to use Rudy as bait to make Roxy come to him again. Yep, our boy ends up in a cell. While he is waiting, someone visits him. It's the 3rd prince named Zenoba. And what's this? Zenoba wants to become our boy's apprentice. He is familiar with the figurines Rudy creates using his shape-shifting powers, and he wants to learn how to do that too. But first, Rudy would need a key to get out of jail. Luckily, Zenoba tells him that he'll get him out of there. Subsequently, Eris, Ruiger, and Aisha are smuggled inside the palace by the guards. The guards want them to rescue their families as well. Now, Zenoba captures Pax, and even his own guards refuse to help because their families have been reduced by Ruiger and the others. All ends when it ends well. Lilia and Aisha are going to be on their way back home. Before leaving, she not only gives Rudy Roxy's panties, but she also gives him a necklace Sylphie had made for his 10th birthday. In return, Rudy gives his forehead protector to Aisha. While they leave, Aisha also reveals that she knew that he was her brother all along and apologizes for calling him a pervert. Though what about Pax and Zenoba? Well, they are exiled from the kingdom because they were obviously up to no good. Things were looking good. Ruiger, Rudy, and Eris continue their journey, but as fate would have it, they come across a rather absurd enemy. We're talking about the dragon god, Orsted. Just being in his presence, they find themselves unable to move. Almost as if the dragon god is using Conqueror's Haki on autopilot. Eris and Ruiger literally cannot move, but Rudy steps forward. He attempts to talk with the dragon god. Now, Ostrad was under the impression that Rudy is one of the apostles of the human god, which is true. The human god is Hitogami, and so he attacks Rudy. Eris and Ruiger try to protect him, but you blink and they've already been defeated. The dragon god then impales Rudy's chest. It's over, but as Rudy is about to die, he sees Hitogami again. Hitogami explains that the dragon god has several curses. One of them makes all living beings fear him instinctively, but for some reason, Rudy did not feel that fear. Anyways, Rudy understands that it's too late, and so he thanks Hitogami for all his help. He truly believes that it's over. However, rather than dying and fading away, he finds himself in Eris's lap. What happened? As it turns out, one of Orsted's own companions, someone named Nanahoshi, tells him to spare Rudy's life. They have already left, by the way. And for the sake of context, let me give you a harmless spoiler. Orsted is one of the 7 great powers, and he is Hitogami's sworn enemy. At night, Rudy mentions Hitogami to Ruigerd, and they also find something interesting. The superb curse on Ruigerd has started to weaken. The following day, the gang arrives at Rudy's hometown. He recalls the story of his early days, and well, this is also where Ruigerd parts away with Eris and Rudy. He tells them that they are now strong enough to handle themselves, and so it's about time he returns to the Demon Continent. Farewell until we meet again, Rudy and Eris then arrive at their destination, where they reunite with Ghislaine and Alphonse, her servant. But all that awaited them here were tales of tragedies. Alphonse explains that her parents were immediately killed because of the disaster while her grandfather was executed by the king. She is the only one left of her family. She also adds that another branch of the Greyrat family has offered her the opportunity to marry into their family. This would help in preserving the family bloodline, but of course, everyone is against it. Still, it's sad though. Heck, it's devastating. Subsequently, Rudy gets confirmation that at the very least, Sylphiette is not dead. That night, Eris pulls up to Rudy's tent, and considering the emotional weight of everything, she finds refuge in the embrace of the man she loves, and the man who loves her back. Or in simpler words, she allows Rudy to pop her cherry. However, when he wakes up in the morning, he finds out that Eris is no longer there. She has left on a journey with Ghislaine. This naturally leaves Rudy all confused, since they were so intimate last night. He gets all depressed because of the loneliness and also starts getting blatant flashbacks of his old life. The bullying, the self-loathing, and the trauma. The PTSD is triggering again. As for Eris, the reason she left with Ghislaine is so she can get strong enough to fight and protect Rudy against people like the Dragon God. Then there is Ruijert. It seems that Team Dead End's efforts have bore fruit. After he rescues some travelers from beasts, they praise and respect him, even when he reveals his true identity as a Superb. Rudy's new disciple, Zanoba, also continues on with his life, while recalling his master. Geese, the member of Paul's party, and a temporary member of Dead End, continues his journey. There's also Guys and his daughter, Tona. He's now personally training her. And remember the Demon Empress? Well, Roxy encounters her, and when she learns all about the money she owes the bar, she helps her pay it. And what does Roxy get in return? The Demon Empress uses her powers to locate Rudy's family. She reveals that Aisha and Lilia are safe, and they have also reunited with Paul and Norn. But what about Rudy's mother, Zenith? She is actually in the labyrinth city of Rapan on the Begarid continent. Perfect, so now that would be her next destination. She and her party immediately start preparing to leave for the continent and rescue Rudy's mother. Speaking of Rudy, what is he going to do about it? After all, his mother is missing. Well, he had a dream about his mother's, and so he gets out of depression and sets out on a journey as well. Meanwhile, we see Sylphiette. She is still alive, but her green hair has turned white, and for some reason she is talking a group of people into adding Rudy to their ranks. What's going on? Well, we find out in the second season. It's already out, so if you want us to continue recapping Mushoku Tensei, make sure you spam that like button and also subscribe to the channel. If we can get 500 likes on this recap, you bet there will be another part. As for the story so far, what do you think? Come on, fill that comment section with your silly thoughts.